Hello, BookTube, and welcome to day 20 of Vlogmas. I was wondering what I was going to do for day 20 of Vlogmas, since as far as I can tell, the number one tradition of Vlogmas seems to be wondering what you're going to do to get through Vlogmas. When I saw on Always Doing, Kazan's channel, I saw her do a list of her anticipated books for 2019. And I thought, that's a good idea. So I'm swiping it. And as I was making my own anticipated list of books, Jen Campbell did the same thing on her channel. A couple of her books were her own books that are coming out in 2019. But I don't quite know the mechanics of how you eagerly anticipate your own book, since you already know what's in it. Maybe just the public appearance of it. I guess I'll know better. This is 2019. I plan on coming out with a book of my own, not anything near as creative as hers, just a collection of my reviews from 2018. It occurred to me late in 2018 that I review in a lot of places, and quite a few of them are behind paywalls. So the people who want to read my book reviews, especially if I expand on them for a book, aren't going to see them all, except for the handful of people that I send the drafts to ahead of time before publication, just to make sure that my T's are dotted and whatnot. So my own book, The Year in Reviews 2018, will not be on my list. But easily came up with 10 books that I'm looking forward to in 2019. The list, of course, could be much longer than this. But I thought I'd go through just these 10. I have it here on a piece of toilet paper. I'm reduced to using toilet paper because, despite my repeated hectoring warnings, none of you has sent me a notebook for 2019 so far. I don't have a BookTube notebook. I went through my old one. It was sent to me by Adam of Memoir, and now I don't have one. But anyway, so I want to give you a list of some of my most anticipated books for 2019. Of course, with the warning ahead of time that this is all just based on the wrapper. I don't have any idea what these books are going to be like, no matter how great a track record an author has, and no matter how promising a subject might be. The book might stink, except for there are a couple of things on this list that are reprints of things, and only reprints, so that I actually do know everything that's in them. Those I can tell you for sure I am going to love, and it's just going to be great to have a reprint. The others, though, I'll enthuse, absolutely, but who knows? Probably some of these will disappoint, and also probably there'll be books that I didn't see coming at all that overjoyed me. So number one is something that I mentioned on this channel obliquely a couple of times before. It's by Rick Atkinson, and it's called The British Are Coming. It's the first volume in his new trilogy of big history books. He's a best-selling historian. He'll be in all the bookstores. And the new trilogy is called the Revolution Trilogy. It's about the American Revolutions, which is like a dream come true for me, to have review sections all over the country, to have bookish discussions all over the country have something to do with the American Revolution. That is just amazing. Plus, I have a feeling that unless catastrophe strikes in the form of a meteorite or something like that, Gordon Wood will probably write about it for the New York Review of Books, and he's a joy. So then number two is a novel by the historian Alison Weir, Anne of Cleve. And this time the Cleve is spelled with a K, Kleve. And it's the latest. She's doing a series of gigantic historical novels, each one about a wife of Henry VIII. And I might lament the overall shape of such a project. I am so sick of Henry VIII concentrations being on his series of wives. I know it's gaudy. I know it makes for great cheap melodrama, but he did a lot of other things. A lot of things that are far more important than his weird homicidal misanthropy. But nevertheless, Anne of Cleves is, in my opinion, one of the more fascinating figures, and one of the less studied ones. My own favorite, you always have to have a favorite Henry VIII wife. Mine is Catherine Parr, his last wife. But Anne of Cleves is I would argue, one of the strangest of them all. The way that the affair started, the way it progressed, the way it ended, the collateral damage and fallout, including the death of Thomas Cromwell. I'd be interested to see what Alison Weir will do about this. I have read a mountain of Tudor historical fiction, a mountain of it. I've never read a good Anne of Cleves novel, so we shall see if this is the first one. But number 3 is Out East, and it's by John Glynn, and it's his debut memoir about a weird kind of early 20-something flophouse on Montauk, which those of you maybe aren't familiar with the east coast of the United States, it's a promontory sticking out into the ocean. It's a home nowadays for some extremely moneyed super mansions. I think this book takes place years ago when Montauk was still wild and woolly. I knew it in those days a bit, and as a memoir, it sounds like it's going to be rife with long late night talks and lots of drugs and alcohol and tons of sex and maybe some coming out. And I don't know, it looks fascinating. It certainly also looks beautiful. I don't know if they'll go with the provisional cover design that I've seen in the catalog, but the cover design makes it look lovely. So I'm always up for a memoir, even though 21st century memoirs have been largely disappointing me because of how rampantly self-absorbed they are. You would think that would be just a given with a memoir, but it's not. Not like this. Not like this at all. No. No. It's one thing for a 20-something writer to tell me that he has no idea when or why World War II was fought, because he didn't study it in school, because his school was weak on history, because he's always been interested in poetry or literature or whatever. That's one thing. That was the 20th century. In the 21st century, that same young person now, that same 20-something person, when I point out that they don't know anything at all about World War II, will look me in the face and tell me that the reason why he's not interested in it is because it didn't involve him. And that's radically different. And that makes for a radically different memoir. But we'll see. We'll see what this one is. Then number 4 is a big graphic novel collection of something of an ongoing comic book that I have largely ignored. It's been a specialty publication. I just haven't bothered to hunt it out at comic shops. I don't go to comic shops regularly. And it's Xerxes by Frank Miller. Kind of his sequel to his graphic novel 300. And I noticed that 300 was coming out in comic book shops when it originally was appearing in issues. And the issues were pricey, and they looked a little weird. They didn't look like anything Frank Miller had ever done. And I thought, well, you know, I'm all in favor of classical history being put in graphic novel form, especially by one of the architects of modern comics. But, and then I got the collection of 300. The big, wide, some of you will know, it's a big, wide, long hardcover. And was blown away. Just blown away by how good it was. And probably the same thing is happening with Xerxes. Probably it's also going to blow me away, and it comes out in its finished form in 2019. So we shall see. But unlike with the case of 300, with 300 I had at least looked at it. With Xerxes I haven't seen anything except little glimpses, single panels of artwork that I've seen on social media. So it'll be totally new to me. Then number 6 is by Douglas Brinkley, and it's American Moonshot. The upcoming 50th anniversary of the American space program is going to flush out a whole number of books. I know of at least 10 coming out in 2019. And this one is about John F. Kennedy and the space program. And I like Brinkley. I like him as a writer. I've liked him more with each book that he's written. So I of course wouldn't miss this anyway. I do not miss any John F. Kennedy books. But it's definitely on my list, not only because I am a Kennedy completist, but also because I'm a NASA completist. So this is win-win for me, unless it's bad. Then number 7 is Mission Critical, and it's by Mark Greaney, and it's a Gray Man novel. He writes, he got his biggest shot at fame by writing some Tom Clancy doorstops, some big novels set in Tom Clancy's imaginary universe. But all the while, he's been writing his own series about a character called the Gray Man, who's the world's most deadly assassin, who for a long time was on the run from his own former paymasters in the American intelligence operatives community. And this book, the premise sounds just fantastic. So it doesn't matter really to me what the premise is. It could be the Gray Man learns how to bake. and I would still read it because I love the Gray Man novel. So the idea that one is on the horizon is always a cause for joy. Then number 8 is a kid's book. It's by Jory John and Peter Oswald, and it's The Good Egg. And it's kind of a follow-up to their great 2018 kids book, The Bad Seed. The Bad Seed was about a bad seed, and The Good Egg is about a good egg. It's just a goody two-shoes egg. So I have a feeling I'm going to love it. I find it hard to believe that I won't. Then number 9 is one, I think it's the only one on this list that I shared with Kazan, and that is The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. Which is the follow-up to City of Brass. Just a big, really inventive fantasy novel. I loved City of Brass, and I can't wait for Kingdom of Copper. This is I mean, City of Brass, it only takes about 50 pages in, not only for you to be completely hooked, but for you to know that you're in perfectly good hands as far as the author goes, which is a wonderful feeling. So I don't imagine that will change in Kingdom of Copper. And then number 10. We're only going to do 10. Number 10 for this list is another comic book thing, and it's another reprint, only unlike with the Frank Miller, this time I know every single detail of what's in this volume, and I cannot believe that it's happening. In fact, I won't believe it until I actually see it. It's apparently DC Comics has finally decided in 2019 to collect the 5 years later saga of the Legion of Superheroes and print it in a book. We'll see if it actually happens. I've mentioned it a couple of times on this channel. For those of you who are completely coming in from the cold here, DC Comics 50 years ago started publishing the adventures of a super team of teenagers in 1,000 years in the future. 1,000 years in the future, a team of teenage superheroes gets together with superpowers to fight evil and injustice in the wider galaxy. And they are called the Legion of Superheroes. And they're one of their rules is that you have to be a teenager to join. You can't be old. You can't be older than a teenager. And they recruit from all sorts of worlds, and they have all sorts of adventures. And like many other people, I fell in love with the Legion and followed it religiously through decades of backup features and its own comics, and then sometimes multiple comics per month, and then cancellations and reboots and more reboots. And there was a time, a long time ago, decades ago, when the artist and writer Keith Giffen pitched an idea to DC Comics. What if we told a Legion story set 5 years later than the ongoing continuity of the Legion of Superheroes? In other words, they're not teenagers anymore. And that wasn't the only change. In the 5 years later saga, the universe has changed. The Legion of Superheroes universe is a sunlit place. It's a happy place. Legion's defeat is never for sure. Their victory is for sure. They are upbeat, happy kids. Hardly any neuroses until later on in the run of the Legion. And in the 5 years later saga, that is different. First of all, it's brilliantly done, brilliantly written, brilliantly paced, and brilliantly drawn. Keith Giffen's first 10, 15 issues are masterpieces. If those are in this volume, then I don't care what the rest of it is. That's worth the price enough. Because, as I mentioned the last time I brought this up, you have to read these things in single issues now, if you're going to read it at all. And that's a little tedious. I've wanted a book for a long time, and so have Legion fans. I've heard all sorts of stories coming from DC that this Doomsday Clock series that they have ongoing, it's a miniseries they have ongoing in their comics, and it is hideously delayed and hideously muddled in its release schedule. And I've heard rumors that Doomsday Clock, the conclusion of that storyline, was going to give rise to not only the return in DC continuity of the Justice Society of America, the very first superhero team, but also the return of the Legion of Superheroes. And I guess that's all been delayed one way or another. So I don't know why. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know why DC would wait until now to do this, and I don't know why they would do it now. But I can't wait. If it turns out to be true, I can't wait. So that is Vlogmas Day 20. Those are just some anticipated releases that I'm looking forward to in 2019. A couple of which I know I will like. The Legion 5 years later, The Good Egg, I will most certainly like. The Chakraborty novel, it's unlikely that these things will disappoint. And others that I'm just really hoping that I like. We shall see. This will not be the only time that we talk about upcoming books in the year. So, but I'll for now, that'll be enough. So I'll wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.